Hi, and welcome to Inside Pleasantville Schools. I'm Emily Rubin Persons, your host and Board of Ed trustee. Today, we're going to hear from our three principals. We're back to school 2021. As of this recording, we're on day 9. So let's get started and see what they have to say. First up, we have Peggy Galotti, elementary school principal.
Very proud principal.
How are we doing?
We are doing wonderful. I'm so happy to be here and have an opportunity to talk about Bedford Road.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, I think about, as a parent of Bedford Road School graduates, I think of some of the rites of passage, which are, of course, drop-off.
Correct.
Pick up.
Challenging.
And I loved you did those videos.
Yes.
Talk about that.
So I think that was one of the biggest challenges for me, was how do we have arrivals and how do we have dismissals and how does it not take 2 hours?
Right.
So Rachel and I put together a couple of videos, and we worked all summer long with Mr. Macucci, who had run the camp and looked at dismissal in a different way. So we came up with our dismissal plan. We put the children's names in the cars so that we can call them.
Right.
And it has been record time and wonderful and safe.
That's
and
great.
That was one of the most important things, that the students were safe and we knew whose car we were putting them in and who was picking them up.
And the whole drop-off. I mean, you used to have that whole kind of concierge service.
Yes.
So.
Yes, so it's changed a little bit. We now open the door, but our parents have been wonderful. They do have to get out of the car and come around.
If the kids need help.
If the kids need help, they have to hand us a health form.
Right.
But we have so many staff members out there that it's been running, weather's cooperating and everything is running smoothly.
That is so great. I would imagine the kids kind of back to their normal silly selves running around. Well, not running around the hallways, but
they are. And today when the children were being dropped off, I thought, this feels normal. And we were waiting for that moment. And we don't have a lot of children that are tentative to come to school, which we anticipated.
Okay.
But I think it went back to the BRS committee, reopening committee, that put a lot of emphasis and a lot of books and a lot of counseling to parents on how to prepare for that first day.
Right. And how are they doing with the masks and the hand washing?
Better, I think, than adults do with the masks. They're terrific. Their masks match their outfits. They match the bows in their hair.
Okay.
We give them mask breaks every hour. We have sinks throughout the whole building, thanks to Steve Chamberlain. Yes.
Okay.
We have them outside. We have them in the cafeteria. We have them in the hallway. So every opportunity that we have, we're washing our hands or we're hand sanitizing.
Wow. That's amazing.
It's been amazing.
And what is a day, you know, how did you recreate your 8 a.m. to, or 8:15ish to 2:40ish? How does that look with the kids and the teachers?
So it looks a little different, and actually when we look at reimagining, we have to be able to take chances. So one of the biggest changes in Bedford Road since I've been there is it's not you eat and you play.
Right.
Or you play and you eat. So we eat during a certain time, and then everyone has recess at a different time together in cohorts. And I didn't know that was possible until we tried it. And it actually breaks up their day and gives them 2 breaks.
They have recess not just right after lunch, they have recess at different times throughout the day?
Yes, so fourth grade, we would have never thought about it. So fourth grade doesn't eat lunch till 1:25.
Right.
So that's very late.
That is late.
So fourth grade has recess at 9:30.
Fantastic.
And it gives them that movement break that they need. And I said to Rachel today, why didn't we ever think of this before? So it's forced us to reimagine. The hallways have noise, which we love. They just have one way to travel.
Okay.
And everyone's used to it.
Well, and that's not as, you know, you guys are not changing classes all the time.
Right.
As in the high school, they have the one-way hallways. So if you're in a certain spot in the hall, on let's say the first level, you might have to walk all the way down, up and over to get to your next class, as opposed to just running up those staircases. But you don't have that same changing every 42 minutes.
Right, though we do have upstairs wells and downstairs wells to avoid congestion, and it's fun. There's big green lines, and they're 6 feet apart with arrows, so they get to stand on. Everyone has their own arrow as they move through the line.
I'm just still on this recess at different times throughout the day. I love that.
It's been wonderful, and we set it up so that we don't mix our cohorts, because that's important right now, is every class has their own bag of equipment. It could be hula hoops, basketballs, footballs. They come, they hand sanitize, they play with the equipment, it goes back in the bag, it's cleaned at night, there's no cross, and the kids get to be outside and they get to see their friends even though it might be from a distance.
Right. Well, now that's another thing, I'm sure you had maybe a few that wanted to be in school with their buddies who were on the other end of the alphabet.
Right.
I know all the three schools have had to deal with that, and I'm thinking the kids have been okay.
They have, and we only divided by alphabet if you had a middle school sibling or a high school sibling. Yeah. So then we divided by a whole other things. But what was neat yesterday for the first time is cohort A and cohort B had morning meetings together. And that's going to happen every day live.
So what is that?
So in the morning at 9 o'clock, if you are home, because you're cohort B and cohort A is in school, the teacher Zooms. So now everyone's in the room.
Oh, that's so great.
And they have a morning meeting. It's fabulous. Okay. And the kids were so excited. They were waving to each other.
Oh, that's so fantastic.
And for the little ones, they do the calendar. So they count the days that they've been in school. They do what the weather is outside. The older ones are talking about current events. And then everybody sails to their next activity.
Wow. It
was very exciting yesterday.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. I mean, that's the thing we've been talking about. Lou Conte often would talk about how the classroom hasn't really changed much in 100 years or so, and the governor's got a push about reimagining and education and what's that going to look like. And I'm sure nobody thought we would be here
in rows
in the middle of it. But it is an interesting concept of how some learning could be done more online, whereas more social things could be in the classroom. How did you figure this all out? Was it just in Pleasantville? Were you working with a lot of other schools? Like, what did you do? So
that's a great question. So I have met for as long as I've been principal, 14 years, in a principal's cohort group. And we met once a week, sometimes once a month, and to share ideas.
Right.
Sometimes 10 principals would come into the meeting, sometimes 3. Since COVID, since March, we probably have attendance of 40 or better.
Oh my gosh.
And it's been amazing. It's been a think tank.
Right.
We would send each other our ideas prior. What are you doing? What are you doing for recess?
What are you going to do for
How
recess?
are you doing your schedule?
Right.
And it's just been amazing. And up until today, if we have a question, we just shoot it out on our server.
Right.
And I have 50 responses and ideas.
Well, you're all dealing with the same thing. So why recreate the wheel 40 times?
Correct.
And you all have parents that have expectations and children that have and teachers.
Right. And I have to give a big shout out to BOCES as well, because they would come to our principals meetings in the summer and talk to us about safety and talked about what we could do and what we couldn't do and why this would work and why that might not work. And then ultimately, everyone did what was best for their community.
Of course.
But I never had the challenges of buses.
Oh, thank goodness.
Which was wonderful.
Right.
Where others did, but then we all went with different models, but primarily everyone went with one of the 3 models that were out there.
Right. I would imagine that was also a challenge in dealing with parents saying, well, this school district is doing that and that school district is doing that. Why can't we do this?
Right.
And we are all unique in districts.
Right.
I was going to say unique individuals, that we are too, but we're also very unique school districts, and we have to do it our way that's going to be the best, and not having the school buses. Can you imagine?
No, I could not. And the wonderful thing about that is, and you're right, people say, well, in the neighboring town, they're all in, but it gave us the opportunity to really spend a lot of time conversing with our parents as to square footages, numbers of students, declining enrollment, increasing enrollment, steady enrollment. So I love when people ask me questions. I would rather be able to sit and explain than for people to wonder.
Right.
So it was another, yet again, opportunity that we've never had before to explain our thinking as much as we have since COVID.
And I think that that's a big part of it. There's a lot that we don't think about as a parent. We just send our kids off to school. And, I have no idea what the square footage of a classroom is and why and all of that. So once those conversations are happening, it's like, oh, okay, that does make sense now. Thank you for sharing that. And I think we're a pretty open district. We encourage people to bring us feedback and ask us questions so that we can provide those answers and everything.
Right.
And on top of it, we all have new software. So you have a whole new learning platform with Seesaw.
Yes, we do, and we love Seesaw.
Okay.
Seesaw is an online program that allows children to record their voices and their responses, to draw their responses, to take a picture of their work. If a child is struggling on an iPad with writing something, they're able to take a picture of it and send it to their teacher. So all of that was lacking in the spring.
Oh, that's so great. So they can take a picture and say, this is where I'm stuck,
Yep.
or
And
this is what I've just done.
Correct. Correct, and it goes right to the teacher. And the other beautiful component is a parent, once the child submits their assignment, can see the assignment and comment on it. So it's been a wonderful adventure, because it's been an adventure finding the right platform.
Right.
And we lacked it in the spring. Teachers now can assess when you are home.
Right.
One of the biggest frustrations in the spring was children were doing their work and it was sitting on their desk.
Yeah.
How do we assess that? Now we have them working on their number facts and their number bonds. They're submitting it. So just like at night when a teacher sat down in their home and they looked at their work, now they know how to form their instruction.
Do it with their, wow, that is amazing.
It's a really great platform.
That's really great. What else do you want your parents or your students to know about what is going on in the school?
So one thing I want to give a huge shout out is to the parents in the community, because we could not have done this. Our opening could not have opened without them. So that is a huge shout out. And to the Board of Ed, and to actually everyone, to Mary, that the police, they were there helping us navigate. And every day I just count my lucky stars that we're able to be here. I think the biggest thing that I want to say is we did it. It's an amazing feeling, and we just hope that the feeling stays as long as we can.
You know, when we were talking just before this, one of the things that you said that I thought was really wonderful is it's a beautiful time because we can.
Right, we can.
And I think that really encapsulates all of that. You know, there's such a strong team with the administrators, the 3 principals, and all the other administrators, you know, Steve Chamberlain and John Barreline, and the superintendent, and the team support.
Yes.
Of making this all happen, of all agreeing, okay, we're going to split the school, you know, we're going to split it by alphabet, because that really makes the most sense. How could you split it any other way when you're not dealing with bus, you know, because we have to drive our kids to school. So just in so many levels that working together.
And I have to add the BRS teachers, and I know Joe and Don feel the same, but they spent most of their summer learning Seesaw and creating lessons and troubleshooting and trying to iron out every kink. Do we iron out every? Not every kink.
Of course not.
But
it's the fluid and flexibility and patience. And I was on one of the committees in the high school as a parent, because, you know, I do have my youngest is still in the district. And I remarked on the number of teachers that were in the meeting, and that is really great, because we can't do it with, you know, they're the ones that are in the classroom. Right. So, you know, we can't say, you must do this, if they need to be there. So I agree. And it's a community effort, and the patience and the flexibility, because here we are in the middle of September, and we really don't know what October is going to be. Right. Or November. Right. So it's exciting. It's scary. It's scary. It's everything in between.
It is. It's exciting. It's scary. It's rewarding, and it's just thinking differently. It's thinking differently and trying to stay positive through when the wall comes up or the hurdle is there, and you have to get over it. It's just trying to stay positive. But when you see little children in the room and walking in the building, very easy to stay positive.
And for many of these young kids, it's like, you know, they haven't been in a classroom for 25 years. Right. So they're like, okay, this is great. So I'm curious how this will, watching these kids as they go through their years, how this positively will impact their educational experience.
Right. And they'll help us. They will guide us as much as we will guide them.
That's right. All right, then. So thank you so much for joining us today. And have a great afternoon. And I'm going to next talk to our middle school principal, Don.
Well, enjoy and come by and see us anytime.
All right. Take care.
Okay.
Don, so here we are, back to school. It's been a long 6 months.
Yes.
A lot of work.
A lot of work. Yep.
But we're all back.
We're back, yep.
What was that first day like? When those kids walked through that door?
Very emotional.
Yeah.
Very emotional, surreal. Some tears of joy, You know, it was a wonderful thing to see the kids walking through the hallway again, and the teachers.
I would imagine the teachers and the kids being emotional. Some of those kids, I bet, seeing some of those faces and the nice, welcoming teachers.
It was great. Yeah, it was great. It was really it made all of the work worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those videos of just letting people know this is what it's going to be like when you come to school today, this is what it's going to be like in the lunchroom. I'm sure that helped to ease some of the fears of the kids of what it was going to be like.
We hope so. It's not obviously a typical year where we have we don't have a lot of students or any students really able to come into the building for move-in day, to move into their lockers and to pick up their school supplies. So we wanted to provide a glimpse into what the cafeteria will look like, what a classroom will look like, what an arrival check-in station will look like.
Right.
All of those things were new to families and to students,
Right. So hard. I mean,
tough,
and we had so little guidance over the summer. So how did you figure out what to do?
We had some level of an understanding about what the guidance may look like in terms of our CDC recommendations and Department of Health recommendations, and SED recommendations came out later. But we did have an idea or an understanding of what that might look like.
Right.
So we began to plan thinking that we would have to cohort to the best of our ability with students.
And cohorting is to keep the kids in smaller groups just to reduce
density in the hallway, and to try to keep groups together that aren't intermingling too much for help out in terms of contact tracing and things like that if we come to that. So that was a recommendation that we already knew. Dr. Shigaris and I worked hard on creating a master schedule that would be eliminating the block, and really trying to set up cohorts for students so that they would have to travel less. Teachers would travel more.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the physical of the cleaning and the kids with their lockers and things, but then you also have the lesson plans. You know, how these kids are learning is so different because they're not with their teachers every single day.
Right.
So how did you and the teachers manage all of that recreation?
Well,
that's a heavy question, I know.
In a short amount of time, you really have to think about how you're assessing students.
Right.
Minutes in the classroom, in-person minutes are very valuable.
Yeah.
So you don't want students necessarily coming into your classroom to sit there and take a test. It's really valuable instructional time. So we have to think about how we're assessing students differently, what an asynchronous assignment at home looks like, what an assignment in school looks like, trying to increase project-based learning. So
buddies, are the kids budding up a little bit?
So students can collaborate with each other.
Right.
You know, you may have a best friend at the middle school or in any one of these, in any of our schools, that doesn't have the last name that's an A through L or an M through Z. So we're trying to think about creative ways to have different cohorts really work together and connect.
And in the middle school with the social, that is so important. They want to be with their best friend.
Yes.
And, you know, if their best friend is on the opposite day, that can be really tough.
Tough. Very tough. Yeah. We did have some requests, of course, for some. So I want to be with my best friend, and
but
hey, I get it. I totally get it.
Right now, we really, and I think for the families who have kids in the three different schools,
they understood.
It really has to be.
They understood. Yeah, and it's for young adolescent socialization and connections and relationships, especially in a time that's tough like this. You want your inner circle there to support you, and I totally understand that. But for right now, we weren't able to accommodate that. But we are looking to increase those connections in between cohorts, remote learners and in-person learners. And Mondays are nice opportunities to do that when the whole group is together.
Yes. So what about, you know, so they're in their classes and they're doing all their work. So what about the activities outside of, you know, after school? You know, what does that possibly look like that when you'll be able to introduce something, a little bit of a club, or because you used to do everything with Curious on the Hudson?
Yes, Curious on Hudson. I've been in contact with Curious, and they are looking to do some remote opportunities that we can present to families.
Right. Do you think you'll be able to do anything inside the school, like some small clubs or student council, or?
We're definitely going to bring back Student Council and Panther Pride Unified, which is our school climate club, and things of that nature that we can do internally. But in terms of Curious, since that's an outside organization, right now, my understanding is that they're going to be a full virtual program.
Going to be. Yep. And, when we were talking earlier, you also mentioned, which people may not realize, is that we have to be out of the school in order for it to be clean. So you have to leave the school at what time?
At 3:30 latest, teachers are asked to leave the building for a deep clean of each classroom.
Which is tough. So if you wanted to have an after-school thing, that still has to be managed out a little bit. As we've been saying all along, September, we're going to just get through September and then see how it all works. I mean, maybe Steve Chamberlain will realize with the cleaning crews that they could do it a little quicker, and you might be able to keep the building open until 4, which would open up a little something.
Perhaps, everything is being tweaked as we've never done this before, so we've reinvented school.
You've never done this before?
No, we've reinvented school in a very short amount of time.
Unbelievable. So, and you've been a principal for how many years?
Fourth year.
Fourth year.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine. You're going to look back on this 10 years, 15 years from now and say, wow, you should have seen what I had to do.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot, but I have a great team, and the parents and the students and everyone has been incredible. Banding together.
I mean, the team, I think that's one thing that we talk a lot about in Pleasantville is, the administrative team, you and Peggy Galotti and Joe Palumbo, as well as the assistant. It is such a team.
We're very tight. Yep.
We talk
every day. Yep.
And then I guess you also have your principal groups that you can reach out to.
Middle School Principals Association through Putnam, Northern Westchester, BOCES.
Right.
Yep, I'm a part of that. And over the summer, they were a huge support to me. We were a support to each other, just having conversations about problems that we're all having and potential solutions for that. So
how are you recreating the English? How are you recreating, breaking it down into these smaller live lessons and asynchronous?
Yeah, and every school district has their own unique issues that are unique to them. But no, that was a great support for me,
What was the most frustrating over the summer?
Just a lack of control. Yeah. The lack of control was tough. I think that was the hardest part. And the fear of the unknown for all of us, the emotional component of that is hard.
True.
Managing the fear of the unknown for parents, for students, for my colleagues, for myself.
Right. Expectations, because we really it's like each week we just don't know. So it's so hard when you can't expect.
It's our superintendent, Mary Fox-Salter, always says it's very fragile. It's a very delicate situation that we're dealing with, and it really is. And feeling like you don't have control over it, which I know that I don't. To some degree I do. To some degree I don't. That's hard. That's the frustrating part.
What's been, you think, the most positive outcome of this? Is there a positive?
Yes. The students are back.
The students are back.
The students are back. Not all, understandably, for families who have immunocompromised. The students themselves are immunocompromised, or family members are immunocompromised. Obviously, that's not something that we can control, and we understand that we're going to try to do everything we possibly can to provide them with a great educational experience. But it's great to see the students, both virtually and in person, back in the building. All that work. Back
to their silly middle school, complicated
it's just so
selves.
It's refreshing, and it's just rewarding, and I'm so proud of them.
Yeah. I would imagine, they're now learning skills a little fast, those executive skills of time management and calendaring, because in order for them to stay on top of their work, they're realizing. So I'm curious, in a couple of years, when those kids are then in the high school, what those high school teachers might notice about the middle school kids.
We're asking a lot of them.
Asking a lot.
We are, and they have to realize that now there's a bit more of an independent. They're becoming a little bit. They're becoming independent faster than they probably anticipated that they would or needed to.
Right, which is not a bad thing.
No.
It's not a bad thing.
No.
I mean, we kind of have shifted a little bit more where, parents are a little bit more in control of their kids than they used to be. So maybe this is an opportunity of allowing the kids to to be a little bit more in charge of themselves and say to the folks, hey, I got this. I'm on this with the teacher. And you have this whole new Schoology platform. How is that working with the kids and the teachers?
I think it's a great opportunity for us where it's kind of a one-stop shop for everything. Students can manage their grades. They can look at their calendar, see their upcoming live classes, see all of their assignments, any discussion boards. Everything's kind of in one place,
and
which
they
is
can
really
communicate
nice.
with their teachers a little bit more easily.
Yes, they can. They are asked to communicate with their teachers and vice versa via Schoology.
Right. It's so important. The sooner these kids learn and are comfortable talking to the teachers, and I would imagine, and I know this with my own son, it's a little easier to be sending messages through the computer as opposed to face, because it's a little scary for a kid to approach the teacher sometimes.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think Schoology is a nice opportunity for us to kind of build that bridge because students are only in school 2 days a week. So now Schoology we think, and we're very happy with it thus far, that it will be the answer for us going forward for a long time.
That's great.
Yeah.
So, one of the things we've talked about at board meetings, and our governor is even talking about, reimagining education. I don't think that they anticipated that this pandemic was going to bring it here so quickly, but, what do you think? What do you see maybe how this could really change things? Have you had a chance to ponder that?
Well, I'm actually I'm in a doctoral program.
Right.
At Manhattanville College for educational leadership, and as part of my dissertation, which I'm actually halfway through the program already, I'm thinking about writing my dissertation on the hybrid model and the distance learning model, and how those impacts are from an academic engagement standpoint, the impact of students on an academic engagement standpoint, and just an overall well-being standpoint. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes, but I think right now it's still so early with everything that our students are going through. But I think that right now the silver lining is that we've really had to dive into from a technology standpoint, had to really sink or swim with technology in a positive way, meaning we're trying out different tools, teachers utilizing different tools that they never thought they would be utilizing this regularly, and students have really taken to that. So it's an opportunity to reach students that we wouldn't have necessarily reached before using a variety of tech tools that some teachers maybe weren't necessarily comfortable with from at the beginning, but right now we quite frankly we rely on them.
Yeah, it's true. It's pushing us in different ways. I mean, there's still need for printing out and writing things, but also having more access to the world.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the face-to-face, in-person school, there's no substitute for that.
Sure.
And also especially in a middle school with young adolescents, it's critically important for students to develop relationships with teachers, manage different personalities, teacher personalities, peer personalities, conflict resolution. That's all of those things are happening in the course of a school day. There's so many different things that happen that you can't use technology to substitute, and I think we all know that, but technology does certainly serve a purpose when distance learning is our only option.
Right. That is very interesting. And they talk about the soft skills, which is what you were just saying, being actually the more important skills for us all to learn. So who knows, maybe there'll be more social things going on, more of that interaction and in the building, and some more of the learning at home. It's a lot of unknowns, but at least for now, we're in the buildings.
We're in the buildings.
So we are just about out of time. Is there any message you want to send to the families or the students or anybody that, other than welcome back?
Just thank you. Just thank you. I mean, I did not do this on my own.
I know you probably didn't even get a day off all summer, I would imagine, right?
No days off, but it really took, from our maintenance crew, custodial staff, teachers, students, parents, administrators, board members, everyone had to play a role into getting this school year up and running, and we're doing it in a safe way. And I just want to say thank you to the community, and thank you to all of you for making this happen and supporting us. Yeah.
Great. Well, here we are, day 7.
Day 7.
Okay, let's get how many more? 100 and I'm not good at math on my feet like that, but let's see. Here we are. 183 more. 173 to go. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, here we are now with Joe Palumbo, our high school principal.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Back to school.
That's right. It's been a wonderful few weeks at Pleasantville High School. Today, I was just thinking it's actually the middle of our second full week of classes.
Second week, yet it's the third week of September. Normally, we would have had so many more days in the classroom, but the kids are, what are they like in the hallways?
So, it's interesting. I spend a lot of time during the day in the hallways and even more time now outside the building. Because one of the things that we've looked to do this year is really capitalize on all of the real estate on the campus. And we are a landlocked high school.
We are.
Where we're located in that residential area. Beautiful campus. And when I spend time in the hallways and on the exterior of the campus, students are just so happy to be there.
Yeah.
Students are using the front of our campus throughout the day.
That front circle is just the best.
Yeah, they're using that for mask breaks. So we extended each one of our passing times in between classes for 2 reasons. The first is we developed a plan for foot traffic to avoid congestion in many areas that might otherwise become congested. So there are some one-way stairwells, there are some one-way hallways. Not every stairway and hallway is that way, but there are, those changes in the building. And then the second reason that we moved the passing time from 3 to 5 minutes was to provide students with that opportunity to get outdoors.
To get outside, which is great.
Every physician that I've spoken with has talked about, getting out into the fresh air.
Right.
So we wanted to make sure that on an hourly basis, all members of the faculty, all of our students had the opportunity to get outside. And we've had some really surprising weather in the last few days. It's gotten a little cold out.
It's gotten a little cold, but that kind of wakes you up a little bit.
It's great.
It's good to get that. So how did you figure this all out? I mean, we walked out of school on March, 13th?
13th, yeah.
And you've had to kind of recreate a lot of things.
So I was thinking about that on the way over. This will be my 7th year, believe it or not, at Pleasantville High School.
7th year at Pleasantville already? Okay,
Right.
And total years as a principal is 11. Have you ever had anything this hard?
So I've never had a challenge quite like this. And I feel like one of the things that's allowed me to navigate, these uncharted waters, is my refusal to try to take it on by myself, right? And I think early on in my career, that's something I would have done. I would have locked myself in an office, I would have stayed there all night, and I would have worked on a plan in isolation.
Okay.
During the summer months, I counted them up at the end of the summer. I had over 18 committee meetings, with teams that looked at...
I was on one of them.
Yeah, instruction and scheduling. We looked at social and emotional learning. We looked at safety. We looked at all of the different, categories that, played into developing this comprehensive plan. And I didn't rely on myself alone or any other one person. It was really a team effort.
Right.
In those committees, I had over 65 parents and students volunteer, which...
Because there's so many angles.
Right.
And you're looking at things from a top-down principle, but then the student is going to say, hey, wait a minute, what about this? Or whatever. So that's really great to get all of that input. And I think all 3 schools did that.
Right, and I don't think we would have had the plan that we have if the community didn't come together the way that we did.
Right.
And really provide each one of those teams with unique perspectives and things to think about.
Right.
And then the other piece is, and I've said this throughout the process, is that the plan that we develop is not static.
No.
We are making adjustments as we speak.
Well, look, you have to be out of the building by a certain time every day because they need to do the cleaning.
Right.
It's possible that Steve Chamberlain is going to realize, or the cleaners are going to realize that they can fine-tune that a bit. So everything, and that's just like one area of your structural day.
Right.
And then the teachers, I'm sure with all of their learning materials for the students, things will evolve in that way as well.
Right. I mean, I've had excellent initial feedback around Schoology, which is our new learning management system. You know, the ironic thing about Schoology is that on March 13th, literally the week before we left, we had just received our licenses for that learning management system, and we had work planned to unroll it. Now, as luck would have it, the feedback that we had around our existing teacher websites and technology was that we needed to make a shift based on what we learned during that initial e-learning phase. And luckily, based on the work that our committees did as part of our strategic planning efforts, we had already secured this new management system. So the task during the summer months was to train our teachers, train our teachers to train other teachers, and then train our students. With the help of George Lamar, I personally conducted 18 training sessions with students. In the last few days in August, we trained over 530 students in groups of 30. They, you know, and George really focused on the learning management system. I did training around health and safety and new protocols in the building. George did a phenomenal job. You know, and my work, you know, was basically, it's easy enough to share a plan with students in regards to how we're going to keep the building safe and, you know, what the healthy hygiene looks like. But really it was, you know, almost like a pep talk, you know, around the fact that we all have to embrace this plan and work at it together in order for it to be successful, and the students have responded so well.
Well, I think it's been coming from so many different angles, and a little bit they get like, okay, we got it, you know, keep your hands to yourself, you know, keep the masks on and all of that, and I would imagine it just for them feels really great to be back in the classroom. What was the most frustrating?
So, you know, over the summer, we got our guidance from the state very late, right? So some of the things that I would hear from community members, you know, and folks that I work with in my professional groups is, well, you know, we should just make a plan and go with it, you know. And as a big state institution, we are very closely regulated by the New York State Department of Education, and more recently, directly by the governor, you know, of New York. So, you know, you don't want to waste time developing plans that you have to scrap based on guidance that you get, like, let's say, in late July. So being patient, I think, was a challenge, because in this business, I've become very accustomed to being able to make long-term plans that you could set your watch to. And I experienced this a little bit when we were planning for our commencement ceremony last year. And that's why I felt like I had a little bit of an advantage over Peg and Don, in that I had already went through a scenario like this. And I think our commencement ceremony ended up being an amazing success.
That was an amazing success, and I know that you were getting pressure from many, from all different directions, saying, well, they're doing, this other school district is doing this, why don't you just make a decision, and, you know, why don't we just do what they're doing? And we had a great graduation.
And what I learned from that experience, you know, was that if you are just slow and deliberate, not only does it allow you to create a plan that has the greatest amount of flexibility based on the changing landscape of the local guidance, but it also avoids creating expectations in students and folks who live in the community that are unrealistic and might set people up for additional disappointment. Because that, for me, over the course of the last 6 months, has been the biggest shift in my experience in doing this work, is I've just, in many instances, based on, you know, regulations that are out of my control, I've had to deal with, you know, a lot of disappointment, you know, when it comes to events, when it comes to programs that we run, and restrictions that are in place that are just upsetting. You know, if you're a senior and you had planned on, you know, the big lacrosse season or the spring sports season, you know, that was very difficult, you know, to deal with. And it's equally as difficult now in the fall for some of our fall athletes, where there still is a level of uncertainty. We do plan on beginning our sports season on September 29th, but there will be a fall 2 season for volleyball and football that will take place later in the year.
And that's going to look all very different. I mean, Mr. Barrowline was at our board meeting the other day, and masks for all athletes. And that's going to be a whole different way of being on the field for these kids, to get used to having, you know, running around and having the mask on their face. But you know what? This is what we got to do. And I think that, you know, the frustration, as you said, it's and the word is the expectations. We have such expectations that, you know, well, my kid, I want them to have the same experience. Look, Washington was canceled.
Right.
You know, how do you manage those expectations? And if anything, I guess we're all learning how to readjust our expectations.
And take advantage of some of the new opportunities.
That was going to be my next question. So
like at home,
right.
The dinners that I had last spring, you know, and this summer, we never would have done.
That's right.
Realistically, we would all have been so busy doing the things that we're doing. You know, there were times when I was frustrated, you know, with the way that things were, and certainly the way that things continue to be in some ways. But, you know, I also wonder, like, down the road, if I'm going to look back and say, wow, wasn't that great?
Absolutely.
You know,
I mean, so many people were sitting down at the dinner table with their entire family for the first time in years and years, particularly kids, families who have a lot of athletes, where they've been on the field, running around at dinner hour, going from sport to sport. So a lot of families had that time. I know my family was all home, and we had big family dinners every night.
Pretty unique.
It was really, you know, Angela Vella, she talked about that, you know, same thing. So that's from the personal side. But what about opportunities? You know, they talk about reimagining education, you know, and you had to reimagine things on a dime. So
yeah, so you know, I would say as we begin to do that, you know, one of the things that we've looked to do is take advantage of all the tools that are available to us. And like I mentioned earlier, Schoology has been a great asset. You know, we've also looked to get feedback from students. You know, when I've looked at the best practices around remote instruction and hybrid instruction, you know, there is a constant theme that you'll see around feedback from the learner, right? So, you know, certainly as adults, we can have great plans about what we think might work or what might be great, you know, based on the way that we learned or maybe the ideas that we have, you know, about a lesson or a unit that we're teaching. And what I've asked our teachers to do is at the end of all those experiences to get feedback from our students so that we can continuously tailor the work that we do to meet our students where they are to provide them with the best possible experience. You know, along those lines, you know, we've had to look at assessment, you know, very differently this year.
Yeah, because if they're only in school 2 days, you don't want those 2 days to be spent taking a test. You want that time to be where the teacher is engaging and the kids are engaging. I mean, so that's
and that was one of the first pieces of feedback that I heard from students over the summer. They were like, Mr. Palumbo, please, if we're going to be in class twice a week, I do not want to spend all that time testing. So we've shifted some work outside the classroom. We've also looked at doing a little bit more project-based learning, which is tied in with our strategic plan.
Which is a great way of maybe getting your kids on the Tuesday to work with the kids on the Wednesday and all of that kind of thing. Okay. Well, we're just about out of time. Is there anything more that you want? One last soundbite message to?
So we're getting ready for our virtual back-to-school night.
Virtual back-to-school night.
It will look different than the in-person event. You know, our back-to-school nights were never really designed for individual teacher conferences.
Right.
So I still want to encourage families, if you're listening and you're watching this program today, please consider contacting your child's teacher directly. If there are individual conversations that you'd like to have about his or her progress in that class. The virtual night, we're using a tool called Flipgrid, where we will share out pre-recorded videos. There will be videos from teachers, there will be videos from the school administrators, from our counselors, from some different community organizations. The nice thing is you can view it on demand.
Oh, good. It's recorded.
You know, I will release it on Thursday, October 8th, but you can access it anytime thereafter. And then, like I said, I want to really encourage our families to take advantage of living in this small town, in this small community, and connecting with those teachers and developing relationships with them, because we all want to support our students. We are just so thrilled to be back in school, and I can't thank you enough in your role as a board member for providing us with all the resources and support that we need to be successful in the work that we do.
It's all for the kids. That's what I say all the time. It's like, we are here. What are we doing here? We are here to make this experience the best it can be for our kids, K-12.
Thank you. That's great. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us on this edition of Inside Pleasantville Schools. I'd like to again thank our principals, Mrs. Galotti, Mr. Marra, and Mr. Palumbo, for giving us a little snapshot into 2021 schools, back to schools, and please look to our next edition for Inside Pleasantville Schools. Thanks so much for joining us, and have a great day.